She was 9 months pregnant, alone on a dark road when her car died. With shaking hands, she called her husband. Instead of help, she heard his whispers and his mistress's moans. Tears blurred her vision as her body went weak. Just before she collapsed, a silhouette approached the window. A man she had never seen before. "Hi, my beautiful family, may the Almighty clothe every woman in a strength that does not shake, a peace that does not fade, and a love that comforts every soul around her. May her heart stay gentle yet powerful, her step steady, her voice valued, her worth recognized every single day. She is the quiet sunrise in the home, the healer of wounds, the keeper of love, the wisdom that guides generations. She is not just respected, she is revered. And may every family listening to this live in calm and unity. May forgiveness soften old pains. May kindness return to every room. May your health stay protected, your dreams stay alive, and your home become a place where hearts rest and souls feel safe. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, right. I am with Mr. Peter. The headlights died first, swallowing the road ahead into absolute darkness. Alicia Kay. Reed gripped the steering wheel as her car shuddered, coughed once like a dying animal, and went completely silent. The engine's death rattle echoed through the empty woods, surrounding this forgotten stretch of asphalt. Miles from anywhere that mattered. No, please. Not now. Her voice cracked as she turned the key again. Nothing. The dashboard stayed dark, lifeless. Outside, trees pressed close on both sides, their branches creating a tunnel that blocked even the moonlight. She was alone. The contraction hit without warning, stealing her breath and turning her spine into a rod of white fire. Alicia gasped, both hands flying to her swollen belly as the pain crested and held. When it finally released her, sweat dampened her forehead, despite the autumn chill seeping through the dead vehicle. Her phone. She fumbled for it with shaking fingers, the screen's glow harsh in the darkness. Another contraction was building already, too soon, too fast. This wasn't how labor was supposed to start. The hospital was 30 minutes away on a good day. On this abandoned road with a dead car, it might as well be on another planet. Josh's number was at the top of her recent calls. Her husband, the man who'd promised to be home early tonight, who'd sworn he was just finishing paperwork at the office, who'd said he loved her with that distracted tone that had become his default over the past months. She pressed call. The phone rang once, twice. On the third ring, he answered. "Alicia, I'm busy right now. Can this wait?" The car died. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "I'm on Bennett Road near the woods. The baby's coming. Josh, please, I need you to—" A sound cut through his end of the line. Low and feminine, unmistakably intimate. A moan that turned Alicia's blood to ice. "Josh?" The word barely made it past her lips. "Just give me a minute," he said, but he wasn't talking to her. His voice had gone soft, tender in a way she hadn't heard directed at her in months. "I'm almost done." Another sound, rhythmic, unmistakable. The creak of bed springs she'd recognize anywhere because she'd picked them out, because they were in their bedroom, in their home, in their bed. "God, Tessa, you feel so good." Josh's whisper carried perfectly through the phone, each word a knife, finding a new place to sink into Alicia's chest. A woman laughed, breathy and satisfied. "Your wife can wait 5 more minutes, can't she?" Time stopped. The world reduced itself to the sounds coming through that phone. His breathing growing heavier, the woman's pleasure-soaked sighs, the steady rhythm that confirmed what Alicia's heart already knew, but her mind refused to accept. "Josh." She tried to scream his name, but another contraction seized her entire body. The phone slipped from her fingers, clattering against the gear shift. On the other end, the sounds continued, oblivious to her agony. Her water broke. The sensation was unmistakable. Warm liquid soaking through her dress and the seat beneath her. Panic clawed up her throat. She was going into labor alone on a dark road, while her husband was inside, another woman, calling her by name, touching her with hands that belonged to someone else. The phone's speaker crackled. "That's it, baby," Josh murmured, his voice thick with satisfaction. "Knew you'd be worth skipping dinner for." Alicia grabbed the phone with slippery fingers and ended the call. Silence flooded back, broken only by her ragged breathing and the distant sound of wind through the trees. Tears blurred her vision, but she couldn't stop them, couldn't stop the way her entire body shook with something beyond physical pain. She'd heard everything. Every moan, every whispered endearment, every sound that proved her marriage was a corpse she'd been carrying on her back, refusing to acknowledge its decay. Another contraction built, this one stronger. She tried to breathe through it like the classes taught her, but the breathing exercises assumed you weren't alone, and terrified and betrayed on a level so profound it rewrote your entire history. Every kiss now became a lie. Every promise transformed into mockery. Headlights appeared in her rearview mirror, bright and sudden. A car was approaching, slowing down. Terror briefly overrode heartbreak. This was exactly the scenario true crime shows were made of. Vulnerable woman, stranded in the dark, perfect prey for whatever predator happened by. But the car pulling up beside her wasn't some rusted pickup. It was sleek and black and expensive, the kind of vehicle that belonged in driveways, with gates and security systems. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out, tall and commanding in a suit that probably cost more than her monthly mortgage payment. He approached her window, bending down to peer inside. His face was striking, carved from sharp angles and deep shadows, with eyes that registered her situation instantly. He didn't smile or try to appear harmless. Instead, he pulled his phone from his pocket with swift efficiency. "I'm calling for medical help," he said through the glass, his voice carrying complete authority. "Can you unlock the door?" Alicia stared at him, another contraction building. Who was this man? Why was he here on this abandoned road at this precise moment? Nothing made sense anymore. Her world had shattered minutes ago, and now a stranger in an expensive suit was acting like rescuing pregnant women from dead cars was something he did regularly. She unlocked the door. What choice did she have? He opened it immediately, his eyes scanning her with clinical assessment. "How far apart are the contractions?" "Oh, I don't..." They just started. Maybe 3 minutes. Her voice sounded foreign, small and broken. "I'm calling my helicopter." He was already speaking into his phone, rattling off coordinates and medical terminology she barely understood. "Obstetric emergency. Full medical team standing by." Helicopter? Alicia tried to process this. People didn't just have helicopters. This wasn't real. None of this was real. He crouched beside the car door, meeting her eyes directly. "My name is Steve Sidney. I'm going to get you and your baby somewhere safe. Do you trust me?" I trusted the word was meaningless now. She trusted Josh, trusted him with her heart, her body, her future. Trusted him when he said he was working late, when he kissed her forehead absently, when he promised he'd be there for the birth. Trust was a currency she'd spent her entire reserves of, and look where it got her. But this stranger's eyes held something she hadn't seen in months: certainty, focus, the absolute conviction that he would do exactly what he promised. "I don't have a choice," she whispered. "No," he agreed, surprising her with his honesty. "But I'm asking anyway." Another contraction hit, this one stealing her ability to respond. Steve moved without hesitation, wrapping his suit jacket around her shoulders. It smelled like cedar and something expensive she couldn't name, and supporting her weight as she tried to stand. Her legs barely held her. The sound of helicopter blades cut through the night air, growing louder. Lights appeared above the trees, brilliant and blinding. The wind from the rotors whipped through the woods, sending dead leaves scattering. Steve guided her toward the clearing where the helicopter was landing, his arms steady around her waist. "What's your name?" he asked, almost shouting over the noise. "Alicia, Alicia, you're going to be fine. Your baby's going to be fine. I promise you." She wanted to laugh at the absurdity of promises, at how easily they fell from men's lips, but another contraction strangled the sound before it could emerge. Medical personnel rushed forward with a stretcher. Steve didn't let go until they'd secured her, his hand lingering on hers for just a moment, As they lifted her into the helicopter, Alicia looked back at her abandoned car, at the phone still lying on the passenger seat, at the physical evidence of the life she'd been living until minutes ago. The helicopter rose into the darkness, leaving it all behind. Josh was still in their bed with another woman. He probably hadn't even noticed she'd hung up. Probably didn't realize his wife was going into labor without him. Probably didn't care. Steve Sidney climbed in beside her, his presence solid and inexplicably comforting. He didn't ask questions or offer empty platitudes. He simply sat there, a stranger who'd appeared when she needed saving, and watched her with eyes that suggested he understood more than he was saying. The helicopter banked, heading toward city lights visible in the distance. Alicia felt something shift inside her that had nothing to do with labor. She was leaving behind more than just a broken-down car on a dark road. She was leaving behind the woman who believed love was enough, who trusted without questioning, who made herself small to keep the peace. That woman died tonight on Bennett Road, betrayed and alone. Whatever came next, whoever she became, would be forged from different materials entirely. Chapter 2. The Gilded Fortress. Alicia woke to silence so complete, it felt like drowning. No beeping machines, no harsh fluorescent lights, no chaos of a hospital ward. Just soft morning light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows and the distant sound of water, a fountain maybe, or a stream. Her body ached in places she didn't know existed. The cesarean incision throbbed beneath layers of bandages. But none of that mattered, because in the bassinet beside her bed, wrapped in a blanket softer than clouds, was her daughter, Haven. The name had come to her in the helicopter, somewhere between consciousness and oblivion. A safe place, a refuge, everything she'd needed and hadn't found. "You're awake." Steve Sidney's voice came from the corner of the room, where he sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than her entire nursery back home. His suit jacket was gone, sleeves rolled up, exhaustion carved into his features. Dark stubble shadowed his jaw. "How long have you been there?" Her throat felt raw, stripped. "Since they brought you out of surgery." He stood, moving to the window. Morning light caught the sharp planes of his face. "The doctors wanted someone to stay. You kept asking for your mother." Shame heated her cheeks. "My mother's been gone since I was 17. "I know. You told me. Several times." His expression softened slightly. "You also told me your husband was a lying bastard who deserved to rot." "Your exact words." The memory of Josh's voice on the phone crashed back. The moaning, the woman's laughter, the rhythmic sounds that confirmed her marriage had been dead long before last night. Where am I? She needed to focus on something concrete before the grief swallowed her whole. "My private medical wing. The hospital wanted to keep you for observation, but I thought you'd prefer privacy." He gestured to the room, which looked nothing like any hospital she'd ever seen. Original artwork hung on walls painted in soothing cream. The furniture was elegant, expensive, chosen for comfort rather than function. "You have a private medical wing?" "I have several properties." This seemed the most suitable. He crossed back to her bedside, his movements careful, measured. "The surgeon says you and Haven are both healthy. The labor progressed faster than ideal, but there were no complications. Haven, he'd used her daughter's name like he'd known it forever." "I don't understand why you're doing this." Alicia's voice cracked. "You don't know me. I could be anyone." "You were alone on a dark road, going into labor with a dead car and a husband who wasn't coming." Steve's jaw tightened. "That's all I needed to know." The phone on the nightstand buzzed. Then again, and again. Alicia reached for it automatically before her brain caught up to her hand. The screen showed 23 missed calls from Josh, 15 text messages, 3 voicemails. Steve watched her stare at the device. "You don't have to look at those." But she already was, opening the messages with fingers that trembled despite her attempt at control. "Where are you?" "The hospital says you never arrived." "Alicia, answer your phone. This is ridiculous." I know you're upset, but you need to come home so we can talk about this rationally. You're being dramatic. I can explain everything if you'd just answer. Taking my daughter away from me is kidnapping. I've called the police. The messages devolved from there, cycling through panic and anger and manipulation, so textbook. She wondered how she'd never seen through him before. The final message had arrived an hour ago. Fine, stay wherever you are, but you're making a huge mistake. We both know you can't survive without me. Alicia set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. He thinks I took Haven. You did. Steve's voice carried no judgment. She's your child. He's her father. Biology doesn't make someone a parent. The bitterness in his tone suggested personal experience. Being there makes someone a parent. Showing up makes someone a parent. He was busy when you needed him most. The understatement would have been funny if it didn't make her want to vomit. Busy. Yes, Josh had certainly been busy betraying every vow he'd ever made. A soft knock interrupted before Alicia could respond. A woman in her 50s entered, carrying a breakfast tray that belonged in a 5-star restaurant. Fresh fruit arranged like art, pastries that looked professionally made, coffee that smelled like heaven. Mrs. Reed, I'm Patricia. I manage Mr. Sidney's household. If you need anything at all, please use the call button. She set the tray on the rolling table with practiced efficiency. The pediatric nurse will be by within the hour to check on little Haven. Patricia left before Alicia could process the title she'd used, Mrs. Reed. The name felt like a costume she'd worn for so long she'd forgotten it didn't fit. How much does all this cost? The question burst out before she could stop it. The helicopter, the surgery, this room, the staff. Nothing you need to worry about. Steve moved toward the door. Eat something, rest, we'll talk later. Wait! Alicia struggled to sit up straighter, wincing as the incision pulled. I need to understand. Why are you helping me? What do you want? He paused in the doorway, his back to her. When he finally turned, his expression held something raw and unguarded. My wife's name was Rebecca. The words came slowly, like each one cost him. She was pregnant when she died. Our son would have been named Daniel. The grief in his voice made Alicia's throat tighten. There was an accident. I was supposed to be home, but I had a meeting that ran late. A deal that couldn't wait. His laugh was bitter, self-lacerating. She called me, told me she didn't feel well, that something was wrong. I said I'd be there in an hour. Alicia knew how this story ended. She could see it in the way Steve's hands clenched at his sides, in the muscle jumping in his jaw. They died before I made it home. Both of them. Because I chose a conference room over my wife. Because I thought I had time. He met her eyes directly. When I saw you on that road last night, alone and terrified and going into labor, I saw Rebecca. I saw my chance to do it right this time. The honesty gutted her. No pretty lies, no noble savior complex. Just a man carrying guilt so heavy it had shaped the architecture of his entire life. I'm not your wife, Alicia said softly. I know. Steve's expression cleared, walls rebuilding. But you needed help and I could provide it. That's all this is. He left before she could call him a liar, because they both knew it was more than that. Whatever this was, gratitude, trauma bonding, two broken people recognizing each other's damage. It was already more complicated than either of them wanted to admit. Alicia looked at Haven, still sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that her world had shattered before she even entered it. The phone buzzed again. More messages from Josh, probably. More lies dressed up as concern. She picked up the device and blocked his number. The action felt both terrifying and liberating. A folder sat on the nightstand, manila and official-looking. Alicia opened it with her free hand. Inside were legal documents, bank statements, credit reports. Her name appeared throughout, but the accounts listed were ones she'd never opened. The signatures were hers, but she didn't remember signing anything. One document made her blood run cold. A life insurance policy. $2 million, with Josh listed as sole beneficiary. The signature date was from 6 months ago, right after she'd told him she was pregnant. Her hands shook as she read through the rest. Loans she hadn't taken, credit cards she hadn't applied for, withdrawals from her grandmother's trust fund, thousands at a time, all approved with her forged signature. Steve's voice echoed from the doorway. I had my financial team pull those yesterday. Thought you should see what you're dealing with. Alicia looked up at him, at this stranger who'd saved her life and was now showing her the evidence of its systematic destruction. He was stealing from me. The words felt stupid, inadequate. The whole time he was stealing from me. Yes, Steve stepped back into the room. And based on the timeline and that insurance policy, I think he was planning something worse than divorce. The implication hung between them, too terrible to speak aloud. Josh had taken out a massive life insurance policy on his pregnant wife. Josh, who'd been embezzling from her for years. Josh, who'd been building a perfect alternate family with his mistress. Alicia thought about the dark road, the isolated location, the dead car. She thought about how Josh had sounded annoyed when she called, not concerned. How he'd continued what he was doing even after hearing her terror. He wanted me dead, she whispered. Steve didn't confirm or deny. He simply stood there, letting her come to the truth in her own time. Haven stirred in her bassinet, making soft newborn sounds. Alicia reached for her daughter with trembling hands, pulling her close. This tiny human, barely hours old, had been the only thing standing between Alicia and whatever Josh had planned. I need a lawyer, Alicia said, her voice stronger now. The best one you know. I'll make the call. Steve pulled out his phone. Her name is Diane Hartwell. She's vicious. Good. Alicia looked down at Haven, at this perfect innocent who deserved better than a father who'd planned her mother's murder. I want to destroy him. Something flashed in Steve's eyes. Approval, maybe, or recognition. Then that's exactly what we'll do. The phone in his hand rang before he could dial. He glanced at the screen and his expression hardened. The police are at my gate. Josh filed a missing persons report. Alicia felt ice flood her veins. Of course he had. Of course he'd play the concerned husband, the desperate father. He'd always been so good at playing roles. Let them in, she said. I want to talk to them. Steve studied her face, searching for something. Whatever he found made him nod. Are you sure? Alicia looked at the documents spread across her lap, at the evidence of years of calculated betrayal. She thought about the sounds she'd heard through the phone, about Josh's tender voice speaking to another woman while his wife went into labor alone. She was done being the naive girl who believed in fairy tales. I've never been more sure of anything. Chapter 3. The Architect of Lies. The police officers looked uncomfortable standing in. Steve's elegant sitting room, their uniforms and heavy boots out of place among the silk and crystal. The younger one kept glancing around like he was calculating property values. The older one, a woman with silver threading through her dark hair, watched Alicia with eyes that had seen too many domestic situations to believe anything at face value. Mrs. Reed, your husband reported you and your infant daughter missing. The woman's voice was professional, neutral. He's very concerned. Says you never came home from your mother's house and your car was found abandoned on Bennett Road. Alicia sat in the armchair Steve had insisted she use, Haven sleeping against her chest. Every word felt like walking through a minefield. My car broke down last night. I went into labor. Mr. Sidney found me and brought me to his medical facility for an emergency cesarean. She kept her voice steady, factual. I wasn't missing. I was giving birth. And you didn't think to call your husband. Let him know you were all right. The younger officer's tone carried judgment. I did call him. Alicia met his eyes directly. While I was in labor, alone on a dark road. He was otherwise occupied. The female officer's expression shifted slightly. Otherwise occupied? With another woman. In our bed. I heard everything. The words came easier than expected. Maybe because saying them out loud made them real. made it impossible to pretend she'd misunderstood. He didn't know I was in labor because he was too busy sleeping with his mistress. Silence filled the room. The younger officer looked away, suddenly fascinated by his notepad. The older one leaned forward slightly. That must have been difficult to hear. The understatement almost made Alicia laugh. Difficult. Like stubbing your toe was difficult. Like bad traffic was difficult. Not like having your entire reality shattered while your body tried to push a human being into the world. Mrs. Reed has documentation if you need proof of the medical emergency, Steve interjected smoothly. Surgical records, admission papers, everything properly filed. The female officer nodded slowly. We'll need copies for our report. But Mrs. Reed, you understand how this looks? Your car abandoned, you unreachable, your newborn daughter with you in a strange man's home. This isn't a strange man's home. Alicia's voice came out sharper than intended. This is the home of the person who saved my life and my daughter's life when my husband was too busy cheating to answer my desperate phone call. Your husband claims he never received a call from you last night. The lie was so brazen, so perfectly Josh, that Alicia felt something cold and hard settle into her chest where her heart used to be. Then he's lying. Check the phone records. The call lasted 4 minutes. She paused, letting that sink in. 4 minutes, while I listened to him with another woman and went into labor alone. The younger officer shifted uncomfortably. The older one pulled out her own phone, making notes. We'll look into it. Is there anything else we should know? Alicia glanced at Steve, who gave her the slightest nod. She picked up the manila folder from the side table and handed it to the officer. My husband has been systematically stealing from me, forging my signature, opening accounts in my name, embezzling from my trust fund. There's also a life insurance policy I never signed, taken out while I was pregnant. She watched the officer flip through the documents, saw her expression tighten. I think he was planning to kill me. The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. The younger officer's head snapped up. The woman's face remained professionally neutral, but her eyes sharpened with interest. Those are serious accusations. Mrs. Reed, I have serious proof. Alicia kept Haven close, drew strength from her daughter's warmth. Check the signatures. Run them through forensics. I'll submit to any handwriting analysis you want. Those aren't my signatures. Why would your husband steal from you? Forgive me, but that seems extreme. My grandmother left me a substantial trust fund. Josh has been accessing it for years. Alicia's voice stayed level, clinical. He also convinced me to sign documents I thought were for our mortgage refinance. I'd like those examined as well. The female officer closed the folder carefully. We'll need to take this as evidence. Do you have copies? Multiple copies, Steve confirmed. With my attorneys and accountant. The younger officer finally found his voice. Ma'am, are you saying you want to press charges against your husband? Alicia looked down at Haven, at this innocent baby who'd been born into chaos and betrayal through no fault of her own. She thought about the dark road, the dead car that had been perfectly fine that morning. She thought about Josh's voice, tender and loving with another woman while his wife suffered. Yes, I want to press every charge that applies. The officers exchanged glances. The woman stood, tucking the folder under her arm. We'll need a formal statement. And Mrs. Reed, if even half of what you're saying is true, you should know your husband will fight back hard. Let him. The words came out fierce, feral. I'm done being afraid of him. After the police left, Steve poured himself a drink from the crystal decanter on the sidebar. He didn't offer her one. She was still recovering, still nursing, but she almost asked anyway. Anything to numb the reality settling over her like concrete. That was brave, Steve said quietly. That was necessary. Alicia adjusted Haven in her arms. He tried to destroy me. I won't let him finish the job. He'll claim you're unstable, that postpartum hormones are making you paranoid. Steve's voice carried bitter experience. Men like Josh always have a narrative ready. Then we'll destroy his narrative with facts. A phone rang. Not Alicia's, Steve's. He glanced at the screen and his expression went cold. It's the gate. Your husband is here, with his lawyer. Of course he was. Of course Josh had already lawyered up, already prepared his counterattack. He'd probably been planning this moment since she'd hung up on him last night. I don't want to see him. The thought of facing Josh made Alicia's skin crawl. But even as she said it, another part of her, the part being forged in this fire, wanted to look him in the eyes and let him see what he'd created. You don't have to. Steve moved toward the security panel on the wall. I can have them removed. Wait. Alicia stood carefully, mindful of her incision. Send them away, but tell Josh I'll speak to him once, tomorrow, with my own lawyer present and everything recorded. Tell him if he refuses, he'll never see Haven again. Steve's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. You're learning fast. I had a good teacher in manipulation. Josh made sure of that. Steve made the call, delivering her message in a tone that left no room for negotiation. Through the security camera feed, Alicia watched Josh's face contort with rage. He said something to his lawyer, a weasel-faced man in an expensive suit, then turned back to the camera. Tell my wife she's making a huge mistake, Josh shouted toward the gate speaker. Tell her I know things about her that will destroy her in court. Tell her I'm going to take everything. The threat should have terrified her. Instead, Alicia felt something close to pity. Josh still thought she was the woman he'd married, the one who could be cowed with intimidation. He doesn't understand yet, she murmured. Understand what? Steve asked. That I have nothing left to lose. He already took everything that mattered. She looked down at Haven. Except her. And I will burn the world down before I let him touch my daughter. Steve studied her for a long moment. The lawyer I mentioned, Diane Hartwell. She's available tomorrow afternoon. I took the liberty of scheduling a consultation. You were very sure I'd want to see her. I was very sure you'd want to fight back. I just didn't know how fierce you'd be about it. His expression softened slightly. You're stronger than you think, Alicia. I'm angry. There's a difference. Anger can be useful if you channel it correctly. Steve set his glass down. But you need to be prepared for what's coming. Josh will try to paint you as an unfit mother. He'll claim you abandoned your family, that you're unstable, that you're keeping his daughter from him out of spite. Let him try. Alicia's voice was steel. I have the truth. The truth doesn't always win. Steve's tone carried the weight of experience. Sometimes the better liar wins. The more convincing story, the more sympathetic victim. Then I'll be more convincing. She met his eyes. You said your wife died because you weren't there when she needed you. That you've carried that guilt for years. But Josh was there. He knew I needed him. He heard me begging for help. And he chose someone else anyway. Steve's jaw tightened. You're right. There's no excuse for that. There's no excuse for any of it. The stealing, the cheating, the lies. Alicia felt the anger crystallizing into something harder, more focused. He built our entire marriage on fraud. Made me think I was loved when I was just a bank account with convenient access. Well, the bank is closed, and I'm going to make sure he pays every penalty for unauthorized withdrawals. A cry interrupted her momentum. Haven was waking, hungry and insistent. Alicia moved to the couch and began nursing, the simple act grounding her back into her body, into this moment. Steve turned away, giving her privacy, staring out the window at manicured grounds that stretched toward distant woods. Why real estate? Alicia asked, needing to think about something other than Josh. You said you built your empire from nothing. Why that specifically? Steve was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant, remembering, because houses are supposed to be safe. They're supposed to protect the people inside. He turned back to face her. Mine didn't protect Rebecca, so I decided to build ones that would... Strong foundations, quality materials, nothing that could fail when people needed it most. That's why you stopped on that road, Alicia realized. Because you couldn't save your wife, so you saved me instead. I told you already. You told me part of it. But it's more than guilt, isn't it? It's penance. You've been punishing yourself for years, And helping me is part of that punishment because it forces you to relive what you lost. Steve's expression closed off, walls slamming back into place. You should rest. The lawyer will be here tomorrow, and you need to be sharp. He was shutting her out, retreating behind the careful courtesy he'd maintained since she woke. But Alicia had seen behind the mask now. She understood the grief that motivated him, the guilt that shaped his choices. "Thank you," she said softly, "for saving us. Whatever your reasons, whatever this cost you emotionally, thank you." Steve nodded once, sharp and dismissive, then left the room before she could say anything else. Alicia looked down at Haven, nursing peacefully, completely unaware of the war beginning around her. Tomorrow she'd meet with the lawyer. Tomorrow she'd start building her case against Josh, gathering evidence, preparing for battle. Tomorrow she'd begin the work of destroying the man who'd tried to destroy her. But tonight she'd hold her daughter close and mourn the life she'd thought she had. The marriage that never existed. The love that had always been a performance. Tomorrow she'd be strong. Tonight she'd let herself break one last time. Chapter 4. The Paper Trail of Cruelty. Diane. Artwell arrived carrying 3 leather briefcases and wearing a suit that probably cost more than Alicia's wedding dress. She was 50-ish, with silver hair cut sharp as a blade and eyes that missed nothing. She didn't offer sympathy or empty pleasantries. She simply set her briefcases on Steve's dining table and got to work. Alicia sat across from her, Haven asleep in a portable bassinet nearby. Steve had offered to hire Diane. Alicia had refused. She'd called her grandmother's old attorney instead, only to discover the woman had retired. The new partner suggested Diane, so here she was, accepting help she couldn't afford from a lawyer she'd never met, feeling the walls of dependence closing in. "I can pay you eventually," Alicia said. "Once we recover what Josh stole, we'll discuss payment later." Diane pulled out files. "Right now I need you to look at something." She slid a bank statement across the table. Alicia's name was on it. The account number meant nothing to her. But the withdrawals, 15,000, 20,000, 35,000 made her stomach drop. "I don't have this account." "No, but someone's been using it for years." Diane produced another statement. And another. Different banks, different account numbers, all bearing Alicia's name, all showing systematic withdrawals from her grandmother's trust fund. Alicia's hands shook as she flipped through them. Each statement was another theft, another lie, another moment when Josh had looked her in the eyes and pretended to love her while robbing her blind. $600,000. The number didn't feel real. He took $600,000, over 4 years, carefully structured to avoid triggering fraud alerts. Diane's voice was clinical, but her eyes held something harder. Someone taught him how to do this. Someone with legal knowledge. Tessa, the mistress who worked as a paralegal, who had access to legal documents and strategies, who'd been sleeping with Josh long enough to help him plan Alicia's destruction. Alicia stood abruptly, pacing to the window. She needed to move, needed to do something with the rage building in her chest like pressure behind a dam. My honeymoon. The memory surfaced, sharp and bitter. He had me sign papers, said it was insurance stuff, combining our lives legally. I signed everything because I trusted him. She turned back to Diane, saw confirmation in the lawyer's expression. He got you to sign a power of attorney document, buried in a stack of legitimate paperwork about insurance and mortgage. Diane pulled out the document in question. This gave him complete access to your finances. You thought you were signing insurance forms. You were signing away control of your inheritance. The honeymoon. The cabin upstate where they'd made love and planned their future and signed papers that Josh said were just formalities. Every tender moment had been theater. Every kiss a distraction while he positioned the knife. Alicia sank back into her chair, feeling the weight of calculated cruelty. This wasn't impulse or weakness. Josh had married her with the explicit intention of stealing everything she had. Their entire relationship had been a con. There's more. Diane's voice was carefully neutral. A life insurance policy taken out 6 months ago. $2 million with Josh as sole beneficiary. She slid the document across. Alicia stared at her own signature, except it wasn't her signature. Close, but the loops were too wide, the slant too extreme. Someone had tried to copy her handwriting and failed. I never signed this. I know. The forensics will prove it. Diane pulled out her phone, showing photos. Your car? Steve had it towed to a mechanic he trusts. Someone sabotaged it, cut the brake line partially, loosened the battery cables. It was designed to fail in exactly the way it did. Electrical first, brakes eventually. The room tilted. Alicia gripped the edge of the table, her mind racing back to that night. The dead car, the dark road, the labor pains hitting while she was completely alone and vulnerable. Josh had planned it. He'd sent her out in a sabotaged car, suggested she take the back roads to avoid traffic, knew she'd be isolated when everything failed. He was going to kill me. The words came out flat, emotionless. Shock was setting in, her brain refusing to process the scope of what Josh had attempted. The brake line is what concerns me most. Diane's voice was grave. If you'd been on the highway, if you'd needed to stop suddenly at speed, you would have crashed, while 9 months pregnant, and everyone would have thought it was a tragic accident. Alicia thought about Haven, sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. Thought about how close she'd come to never holding her daughter, to dying on that road, while Josh collected $2 million and moved on with his mistress and their baby. Why didn't the brakes fail? Her voice sounded strange, distant. Because you took back roads at low speed? Because Steve found you before you needed to brake hard? Because you got lucky? Diane leaned forward. But Alicia, luck isn't a defense. We need to prove intent. We need to show this wasn't random mechanical failure, but calculated attempted murder. How? By documenting everything. The forensics on your car, the forged signatures, the pattern of theft and deception, the recordings. Diane paused. You said you heard Josh with another woman on the phone. Do you still have that call in your history? Alicia pulled out her phone with shaking hands. Found the call log. 4 minutes and 17 seconds while she'd gone into labor alone, listening to her husband inside his mistress. The phone company can retrieve that. Prove the call happened, prove the timeline. Diane made notes. And if we can get Tessa Bloom to testify, she won't. Alicia's voice was hollow. Ma-di-da-di-di. She helped him. She's complicit. Why would she turn on him? Because she's pregnant and facing prison time. Diane's expression was calculating. Because Josh was using her the same way he used you, as a means to an end. Because I'm very good at making people understand which side benefits them most. Steve appeared in the doorway. The mechanic just sent his full report. The brake line cut was recent, within 2 weeks of the breakdown, and the service records show Alicia had the car checked just before that. Someone sabotaged it after it was cleared as safe. He'd been listening. Alicia felt a flash of irritation. This was her life, her crisis, her decisions to make. But she was also sitting in his home, using his resources, accepting help she couldn't refuse because she had nowhere else to go. The dependence chafed. She'd escaped one man's control only to fall into reliance on another. Even if Steve's intentions were good, even if he was nothing like Josh, she was still powerless in ways that made her skin crawl. I need to see my house. The words came out abruptly. The one I shared with Josh. I need to get my things, need to... That's not safe. Steve's voice was firm. Josh knows you're here. He's already tried to use police to get to you. Going to that house gives him opportunity to... To what? I'm not asking permission. Alicia stood, anger finally breaking through the shock. I understand you're helping me. I'm grateful for that, but I'm not a prisoner and I'm not helpless. I need to face what he did. I need to see the bed where he betrayed me, the office where he forged my signatures, the garage where he sabotaged my car. I need to stop running from it. Silence filled the room. Diane and Steve exchanged glances. Alicia felt the familiar weight of people managing her, protecting her, making decisions about what she could handle. "Then I'll go with you," Steve said finally. "Not to control you, to make sure you're safe while you do what you need to do." It was a compromise. Alicia wanted to refuse on principle, wanted to prove she could do this alone. But she also wasn't stupid. Josh was dangerous. Going to that house alone would be reckless. "Fine, tomorrow. I want to see it in daylight." She turned to Diane. "What do you need from me?" "Everything. Every vulnerable moment you shared with Josh that he might weaponize. Every time you cried, every time you expressed doubt about pregnancy or motherhood, every therapy session where you discussed your grandmother's death or your father's abandonment. He's going to paint you as unstable. I need to know what ammunition he has." The request felt like stripping naked in front of strangers. Every private pain, every moment of weakness laid out for legal strategy. But Alicia thought about Haven, about the future she wanted for her daughter, about refusing to let Josh's cruelty define what came next. "I kept journals," she said quietly. "After my grandmother died, my therapist suggested writing through the grief. I wrote about feeling lost, about not knowing if I was ready for marriage or motherhood, about being terrified I'd mess everything up." "Where are these journals?"
"At the house."
"In my nightstand, where Josh could easily access them, where he'd probably read them, catalogued her fears, prepared to use her own words against her." Diane made notes. "We'll get them tomorrow when you go." "Anything else he might use?" Alicia thought about therapy sessions, about emails to friends expressing anxiety, about text messages to her grandmother before she died saying she felt overwhelmed by life. Every normal human moment of vulnerability now transformed into potential evidence of mental instability. "My entire life," she said bitterly. "He'll use my entire life against me, because that's what he does. He takes authentic emotion and weaponizes it. Then we counter by showing that's exactly what abusers do." Diane's voice was steel. "We show the pattern. We show how he isolated you, manipulated you, made you doubt yourself while stealing everything you had. We turn his strategy into proof of his guilt." After Diane left, Alicia sat with the documents spread before her. Each one was another piece of evidence that her marriage had been fiction, that the man she'd loved had never existed. Steve brought coffee, set it beside her without speaking. The gesture was kind, but it also reminded her of her dependence. She hadn't earned this coffee, this safety, this help. It was charity, and charity always came with strings, even when the giver pretended otherwise. "I need to pay you back," Alicia said. "For everything. The helicopter, the medical care, this house. Diane's fees." "We'll figure it out when you're back on your feet." Steve's voice was patient, which somehow made it worse. "I don't want to be someone's project." The words burst out sharper than intended. "I don't want to be the broken woman you save to make yourself feel better about not saving your wife." Steve flinched. Good. Alicia felt cruel satisfaction followed immediately by guilt. He'd done nothing to deserve that, but she couldn't stop the resentment building, couldn't stop feeling trapped by gratitude and dependence, and the growing sense that she'd traded one cage for another. "I'm sorry," Steve said quietly. "I didn't mean to make you feel that way. Tell me what you need." "I need to not need you," Alicia's voice cracked. "I need to stand on my own and know I'm capable and not feel like I'm drowning every time I think about fighting Josh without your resources and support. I need to be enough on my own, but I'm not yet. And I hate it." The honesty hung between them. Steve nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "Then we'll work toward that, toward you not needing me, toward you being independent and strong enough to walk away if you want to." He met her eyes. "Even if that means walking away from me." It was the right answer, but it also hurt because Alicia didn't want to walk away. She just needed to know she could. Needed to know her feelings for Steve were real and not just trauma bonding and gratitude twisted into something that looked like affection. Tomorrow we go to the house, she said, changing the subject. Tomorrow I face what he did, and then we destroy him, Steve nodded. Together, but on your terms. Always on your terms. Alicia looked down at Haven, sleeping peacefully through her mother's reckoning with betrayal. Tomorrow would be hard, but it would also be the beginning of taking back control, of stopping being a victim and becoming someone who fought back with everything she had. Josh thought he'd destroyed her. He was about to learn what she looked like when she rose from the ashes. Chapter 5. The Unveiling. 6 weeks later, Alicia stood in front of a full-length mirror in a dress that cost more than her car used to. Deep emerald silk that made her skin glow, fitted perfectly to her post-pregnancy body, elegant without trying too hard. Her hair was styled in intricate braids, woven with thin gold chains, a style her grandmother used to wear. She looked like someone else entirely. Someone powerful, someone dangerous. You look beautiful. Steve appeared behind her, adjusting his cufflinks. Ready for this? The charity gala. The first public appearance since Haven's birth, since her world imploded, since she'd started building something new from the wreckage. All of the city's elite would be there, including Josh and his mistress. Diane had suggested using the event strategically. Let people see Alicia strong and composed. Let Josh see what he'd tried to break. I'm terrified, Alicia admitted. But yes. They drove to the venue in Steve's car, Haven safely at home with the nanny Steve had hired. Alicia had protested the expense. She protested all his expenses. But Steve had simply said the nanny was for his peace of mind too. He worried when Haven was unprotected. After what happened to Rebecca, he worried about everything. The ballroom was stunning, all crystal and gold and flowers that probably cost more than most people's mortgage. Alicia walked in on Steve's arm and felt every eye turned toward her. The whispers started immediately. Some sympathetic, some curious, some judging. She held her head high and smiled like she belonged here. Like she hadn't spent the last 6 weeks crying and healing and plotting revenge. Then she saw Josh. He stood near the bar with Tessa beside him, her pregnancy visible in the fitted dress she wore. Josh looked exactly like he always had. Handsome in his tailored suit, confident smile, the picture of success. But Alicia saw the cracks now, the 2 bright eyes that suggested desperation, the tension in his shoulders, the way he gripped his glass like a lifeline. Tessa saw her first. The other woman's face went pale, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. Josh followed her gaze and froze. For one beautiful moment, Alicia watched recognition and fear war across his features. Breathe, Steve murmured near her ear. You're in control here. Alicia dragged her attention away from Josh and toward the stage where the event coordinator was setting up. This was her grandmother's foundation, revived with Steve's financial backing and her own reclaimed funds. She'd spent weeks planning tonight's speech, crafting every word to be both personal and universal. People began taking their seats. Alicia waited backstage, her heart hammering against her ribs. Through the curtain gap, she could see Josh and Tessa sitting near the front, probably thinking their prominent placement made them look supportive. They had no idea what was coming. The coordinator introduced her. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Alicia K. Reed, Director of the K Foundation for Women's Financial Independence. Alicia walked onto the stage. The lights were bright, making it hard to see individual faces, which helped. She gripped the podium and looked out at the sea of formal wear and false smiles. My grandmother established this foundation because she understood something crucial. That the most dangerous cage isn't made of bars. It's made of love and money and trust, twisted together until you can't tell where safety ends and control begins. Her voice was steady, clear. She knew because she lived it. Because my grandfather convinced her that love meant giving him control of everything, and by the time she realized her mistake, she had nothing left but the will to make sure other women wouldn't repeat it. The room had gone quiet. People leaned forward, sensing something raw and real breaking through the typical charity speech polish. Financial abuse is invisible. It doesn't leave bruises people can see. It works slowly, carefully, isolating you from resources until you can't leave even when you want to. The abuser convinces you it's for your own good, that you're not capable of handling money, making decisions, being trusted. They forge your signature. They drain your accounts. They build a prison so carefully that you don't realize you're trapped until the door is already locked. Josh's face had gone rigid. Tessa was whispering something to him, urgent and low. Alicia didn't look directly at them, but she felt their discomfort like a physical thing. This foundation helps women escape that prison. We provide financial literacy education, legal resources, and emergency funds for women leaving abusive situations. We help them rebuild credit destroyed by partners who opened accounts in their names. We help them fight back against men who thought they could steal everything and face no consequences. She paused, letting the words land, letting everyone in that room understand exactly what she was talking about, exactly who she was talking about. My grandmother used to say that the best revenge is building something beautiful from the rubble someone left in your life. So that's what we're doing here, taking the pain, the betrayal, the calculated cruelty, and transforming it into power for the next woman who needs it. Because we will not be silent, we will not be ashamed, and we will not let anyone steal our voices along with our money. The applause started slowly, then built into something thunderous. Alicia saw women in the audience with tears streaming down their faces, saw men looking uncomfortable, shifting in their seats, saw Josh standing up, his face twisted with rage. He pushed past Tessa and headed for the exit. The other woman looked around desperately, then hurried after him. Alicia watched them go and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. After the speech, people swarmed her. Wealthy women pressing business cards into her hand, promising donations, sharing whispered stories of their own financial abuse, survived or still endured. Men who actually listened, who understood the message, who wanted to help. The foundation would be funded beyond her wildest dreams after tonight. Steve found her when the crowd finally thinned. You were magnificent, absolutely devastating. Josh left. Alicia couldn't keep the satisfaction from her voice. He left because he knows everyone in this room is now looking at him differently. You didn't say his name, but you didn't have to. Steve's expression was proud, almost fierce. You just declared war in front of everyone who matters. Good. I want him to know I'm not afraid anymore. They stayed through dinner, through more conversations and promises of support. Alicia felt herself transforming throughout the evening, shedding the last remnants of the woman who'd believed in fairy tales. This was who she was now, strong, strategic, someone who used her pain as a weapon. As they were leaving, someone blocked their path. Josh's lawyer, the weasel-faced man from Steve's Gate. Up close, he looked even more reptilian. Mrs. Reed, I'm representing your husband in the custody proceedings. I wanted to give you fair warning that we'll be filing an emergency motion tomorrow claiming you're exposing your daughter to an immoral environment. His smile was oily, practiced. Living with a man you barely know while still legally married. Very concerning for a newborn's welfare. Alicia felt Steve tense beside her, but she placed a hand on his arm. This was her fight. Tell Josh that I'll see him in court. And tell him that if he really cares about Haven's welfare, he should stop trying to destroy her mother and start explaining why he tried to murder her. She smiled sweetly. Those are the conversations I'm looking forward to having. Under oath, on the record, with evidence. The lawyer's expression flickered. Those are wild accusations. They're documented facts. But I appreciate you confirming that Josh's defense strategy is to attack my character rather than address his crimes. Makes my lawyer's job much easier. Alicia stepped closer, her voice dropping. You're on the wrong side of this. When it all comes out, and it will all come out, everyone who helped him will be remembered. You might want to think about that. She walked past him, Steve following. Behind them, she heard the lawyer making a hasty phone call, probably to Josh, probably warning him that Alicia wasn't who he thought she was anymore. In the car, Steve was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "You threatened his lawyer." I stated facts. "You're enjoying this, not a question, an observation." Alicia thought about it, about the satisfaction she'd felt watching Josh flee, about the power surging through her when she'd faced down his lawyer. "Is that wrong? To enjoy fighting back?" "No." Steve's voice was quiet. "It's human. Just don't let the anger consume everything else. Don't become so focused on destroying him that you forget to build your own life. Is that what you did after Rebecca?" Steve's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Yes, I spent 5 years building an empire I didn't care about because I was punishing myself. Don't make my mistakes, Alicia. Win your war, but remember what you're fighting for." They drove home in thoughtful silence. When they arrived, the nanny reported Haven had been perfect. Alicia paid her and went to check on her daughter, finding her sleeping peacefully in the nursery Steve had commissioned. Everything soft and safe and beautiful. She stood there for a long time, watching Haven's chest rise and fall, reminding herself what mattered. Not revenge, though revenge would be sweet. Not destroying Josh, though he deserved destruction. What mattered was this tiny human, this perfect innocent who deserved better than the legacy of betrayal and violence her father had tried to create. Alicia heard footsteps behind her. Steve stopped in the doorway, maintaining respectful distance like always. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything. For saving us, for supporting me, for understanding when I need to fight and when I need to remember why I'm fighting. You don't need to thank me. I do, though, because you could have just dropped us at a hospital that first night. Could have walked away from all of this. But you stayed." She turned to face him. "Why did you really stay, Steve? And don't tell me it's about Rebecca. It's more than that now." He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. "Because when I look at you, I see someone choosing to survive, choosing to fight, choosing strength over surrender. And that's something I forgot how to do after Rebecca died." He met her eyes. "You remind me that life doesn't end with tragedy. It just changes. And maybe that change can be powerful instead of just painful." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning they weren't ready to explore. Alicia knew she should step back, maintain boundaries, focus on Haven and the legal battles ahead. But she was tired of doing what she should, tired of being careful. "Josh is filing an emergency custody motion tomorrow," she said. "Claiming I'm unfit, claiming Haven is in danger here." "I know. Diane already warned me." Steve's expression hardened. "He's going to try to take her from you." "Let him try." Alicia's voice was steel. "I will burn his entire world to ashes before I let him touch my daughter. Whatever it takes, whatever it costs, he will not win." Steve smiled then, something fierce and approving. "Then we'll burn it together." Chapter 6. The Courtroom Massacre. The courtroom smelled like old wood and broken promises. Alicia sat beside Diane, watching Josh perform. He'd chosen his outfit carefully. Concerned father, wronged husband. His voice cracked on cue. "Your Honor, my daughter is living with a stranger." I've tried to be understanding about Alicia's struggles, but Haven is at risk, Diane had warned her. Josh would lie, would manipulate, would be convincing. Alicia forced herself to breathe. Josh's lawyer called Tessa first. The pregnant mistress walked to the stand slowly, her belly obvious, her face arranged in careful concern. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. "Miss Bloom, how long have you known the defendant?" "I've worked with Josh for 2 years. He's always been professional." Tessa's voice was soft. "He talked about his wife constantly, how worried he was about her mental state during pregnancy." The lie was so smooth, Alicia almost admired it. "Can you describe his concern?" "He said Alicia had been depressed since her grandmother died, that she cried constantly, talked about not wanting to be a mother, said she felt trapped." Tessa looked at the judge. "He was terrified she might hurt herself or the baby." Alicia's fingernails bit into her palms. Every word was fabricated, twisted from vulnerable moments she'd shared with Josh when grief left her raw. "And the night the baby was born?" Josh was working late. Alicia called, but she hung up before he could understand. By the time he got home, she was gone. We thought she might have done something terrible. Perfect performance. Tessa painted Josh as desperate husband, herself as concerned colleague, erasing everything Alicia had heard through that phone. Diane stood for cross-examination, pleasant and deadly. "Miss Bloom, you've known Josh longer than 2 years, haven't you?" Tessa hesitated. "We met at a conference 3 years ago and started a romantic relationship when... We're not... That's not relevant. Answer the question, Miss Bloom." The judge's voice was sharp. "About 18 months ago." Tessa's face flushed. "But it didn't start romantic. We were friends first. Friends who are expecting a child together." Diane's smile was surgical. 18 months ago. That would be roughly when Alicia became pregnant with Haven. What a coincidence. Josh's lawyer objected. The judge allowed it. Diane pulled out phone records, text messages between Josh and Tessa, speaking of love and future plans and getting rid of problems. Each message dated, time-stamped, undeniable. "Did you help Josh access his wife's trust fund?" "I gave him legal advice. That's my job. Legal advice on forging her signature, on creating fraudulent documents." Diane produced papers marked with forensic analysis, proving fake signatures. "You work as a paralegal, Miss Bloom. You understand these are crimes." Tessa's composure cracked. "I didn't know he was forging anything. He said she'd signed them, but you processed the documents, filed them, helped structure accounts where stolen money was deposited." Diane's voice never rose. "Just cold facts. Tell me, were you planning to live off that stolen money with Josh and your baby?" "Objection!" Josh's lawyer was standing. "This is establishing motive and credibility," Diane countered. "Miss Bloom has perjured herself repeatedly." The judge allowed it. Tessa left the stand shaking. Josh looked pale but determined. His turn came. He took the stand with false confidence, answering softball questions with practiced sincerity. Talked about loving Alicia, about trying to help her, about being devastated when she disappeared. Then Diane stood up. "Mr. Campbell, you stated you were working late the night your daughter was born. Where exactly?" "At my home office. I had briefs to review." "Interesting. Phone records show you were home, but the office line wasn't used. Your cell was, though. Can you explain 47 calls and texts between you and Miss Bloom that evening?" Josh's jaw tightened. "We were discussing a case that required ignoring 3 calls from your wife in active labor." Diane pulled out phone logs. "Alicia called at 8:14, 8:42, and 8:56. You answered the 3rd call. It lasted 4 minutes, 17 seconds. What did you discuss?" "She was hysterical. I couldn't understand her." "You couldn't understand the baby's coming. I need help." Diane's voice dripped skepticism. "Or were you distracted by Miss Bloom, who was in your home at the time?" "Tessa wasn't." "Security footage from your neighbor's doorbell camera shows her car in your driveway from 6:15 until 10:30. She was there, Mr. Campbell. While your wife went into premature labor alone, you were with your mistress." The courtroom erupted. Josh went from pale to crimson. His lawyer tried to object, but the judge waved him silent. "I made a mistake." Josh's voice was smaller. "I was stressed. I needed support." "You needed support, so you committed adultery while your pregnant wife begged for help." Fascinating priorities. Diane pulled out more documents. "Let's talk about this life insurance policy. $2 million taken out 6 months ago. Explain this signature." Josh looked at the paper. "Alicia signed that. We discussed it." "No, Mr. Campbell. Forensic analysis shows this signature is forged." "Poorly, actually." Diane produced the expert report. "And this trust fund access? These loan applications? All forged signatures. All crimes you committed while pretending to be a loving husband." "That's a lie. She's making this up because she wants to be with Steve Sidney. She abandoned me for a richer man and now she's trying to destroy me." There it was. The accusation Diane had prepared her for. "Is that your defense? That your wife, who you were systematically robbing and possibly planning to murder, left you for someone else?" Diane's laugh was harsh. "Let's talk about the car. The one that mysteriously died on Bennett Road. The mechanic's report shows sabotage. Someone cut the brake line and loosened the battery cables. Who had access to that vehicle? Anyone could have. You're the only other person with keys. You suggested she take back roads. You knew she'd be alone that night. Diane moved closer. You set it up. Sent your pregnant wife on a dark road in a sabotaged car, hoping for an accident. When that didn't work fast enough, you just let her go into labor alone while you were with your mistress. Tell me, were you disappointed when she survived? This is insane, Josh shouted. I loved my wife. You loved her money. Diane's voice cut like a blade. $600,000 stolen over 4 years. Every signature forged. And when the money wasn't flowing fast enough, you took out life insurance and started planning her death. That's not love, Mr. Campbell. That's premeditated murder. The judge called for order. Josh's lawyer demanded a recess. Diane calmly presented recording after recording. Josh and Tessa discussing the Alicia problem, planning their future, laughing about how naive she was. The final recording made Alicia's blood freeze. Once the baby's born, and I have access to the full trust, we just need one good accident. Postpartum women die all the time. Depression, exhaustion, tragic mistakes. No one will question it. Tessa's response was equally chilling. And then we can finally be together. Just us and our real family. The judge's face hardened into granite. I'm granting Mrs. Reed full custody of Haven Campbell. Mr. Campbell, you are denied all visitation pending criminal investigation. I'm referring this to the district attorney's office. Bailiff, take Mr. Campbell into custody. Josh being handcuffed, screaming about injustice. His lawyer protesting. Tessa trying to leave, but police already moving toward her. Alicia sat frozen, watching her husband dragged from the courtroom. He looked at her one last time, expression pure hatred. You destroyed me, he snarled. I gave you everything, and you destroyed me over nothing. You destroyed yourself. Alicia's voice was steady. I just made sure everyone could see what you really are. Outside, reporters swarmed. Diane handled them while Steve guided Alicia to the car. She felt numb, disconnected. In the back seat, Steve took her hand. You won. I know, but victory felt hollow, tainted. Why doesn't it feel better? Because winning doesn't erase what he did. Doesn't give you back the years he stole or the trust he destroyed. Steve's grip tightened. But it does mean he can't hurt you anymore. That's something. Alicia looked out at the city passing by. Josh would go to prison. Tessa would face prosecution. Haven would grow up knowing her father was a monster. None of it was fair or right or good, but it was justice. And sometimes justice was all you got. Chapter 7. The Fortress Cracks. 3 months later, Alicia stood in her new townhouse doorway, watching movers carry in the last furniture. Not much. She'd left almost everything from the house she'd shared with Josh, didn't want the memories, the taint of his presence. Haven cooed from her carrier, growing bigger every day. 10 months old now, starting to pull herself up, trying to walk. She had Alicia's eyes and mouth, but unfortunately Josh's nose and chin. Alicia tried not to see him in her daughter's face, and mostly succeeded. Steve arrived as movers left, carrying boxes from his car. I brought your grandmother's things from storage. Thought you might want them now that you have space. Alicia had been staying at his estate since that night, recovering and fighting legal battles. But the custody case was over. Josh was in prison awaiting trial. It was time to build her own life, separate from Steve's charity. You didn't have to bring them yourself. She took a box from him, lighter than expected. I wanted to see the place. Make sure it's secure. Steve surveyed the townhouse critically. The locks are good, but you should install a security system. Cameras at minimum? Josh is in prison. His family isn't. Steve's voice was grim. They blame you for his arrest. I've heard rumors they're planning something. Josh's family. Wealthy, connected, convinced their golden boy had been destroyed by a vindictive woman. They'd hired lawyers to appeal his custody ruling, sent threatening letters, made their feelings clear. Let them plan. I'm not hiding anymore. Alicia set the box on her kitchen counter. This is my home. I'm not running from it. Steve looked like he wanted to argue, but caught himself. I know you need independence. Just be careful. I'm always careful now. She opened the box, finding her grandmother's photo albums. Pictures of a woman who'd survived her own terrible marriage and built something meaningful. She would have liked you, I think. Why? Steve moved closer, looking at photos over her shoulder. Because you're honest about your damage. She used to say the most dangerous people are the ones who pretend they're fine when they're broken inside. Alicia touched a photo of her grandmother at 50, strong and vibrant and free. You never pretended. Neither did you. Not once you stopped believing Josh's lies. Steve's voice was quiet. That's what I admire most. The way you refused to keep lying to yourself once you saw the truth. They unpacked in comfortable silence, filling the townhouse with pieces of Alicia's history. Her grandmother's dishes, her mother's books, her own collection of things Josh had dismissed as worthless. Each item felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. When the last box was empty, Steve made coffee. They sat at the small table, Haven playing on a blanket nearby. The foundation is doing well, Alicia said. We've helped 43 women leave abusive situations in the last 2 months. The gala money is funding 3 new programs. You've built something extraordinary. Steve's expression was proud. Your grandmother would be proud too. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. Eventually, I just sped up the timeline. He set his cup down carefully. Alicia, I need to tell you something. The serious tone made her stomach tighten. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, but I've been thinking about boundaries, about our relationship, about what's appropriate. Steve wouldn't meet her eyes. I think I need to step back, create some distance. The words hit like a physical blow. Why? Because every time I look at you, I want things I have no right to want. And I'm terrified I'm using you to fill the hole Rebecca left, that I'm repeating my mistakes. His voice was raw, pained. You deserve better than someone who's still carrying so much guilt he can barely function. Alicia processed this, the confession he was making. What do you want that you have no right to? You. The word was barely a whisper. I want to be part of your life, part of Haven's life. I want to come home to you instead of an empty house. I want to stop performing grief and start living again. But I don't know if those feelings are real or if they're just me trying to rewrite history. The honesty was devastating. Alicia understood wanting things you couldn't trust, feeling emotions that might be trauma rather than truth. I think about you constantly, she admitted. Wonder what you're doing, if you're okay, if you're as lonely as I am. But I don't know if that's genuine or if I'm just transferring my need to be saved onto the person who saved me. They sat with that truth between them, 2 broken people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and didn't know how to be anything but broken together. So what do? Steve asked. We do what you suggested. Create distance. Figure ourselves out separately before we try to be anything together. The words hurt to say, but Alicia knew they were right. I need to know I can stand on my own. And you need to stop punishing yourself for Rebecca's death. Steve nodded, pain clear in his expression. I'll still be here if you need anything. I know, but I'm not going to need you the way I did before. I'm going to need you less and less, until maybe I don't need you at all. Alicia forced herself to meet his eyes. And if we still want each other after that, it'll mean something real. He left soon after, the space between them feeling like miles. Alicia watched him drive away and felt something crack in her chest. She'd just sent away the person who'd been her anchor through hell. Now she had to learn to anchor herself. Haven fussed, needing attention. Alicia picked her up, holding her daughter close. This was what mattered. Not romance or rescue or replacing what Josh had destroyed. Just this tiny human who needed her mother to be strong and whole. The days that followed were harder than expected. She'd gotten used to Steve's presence, his quiet support, the way he understood without her having to explain. Now she came home to an empty townhouse, put Haven to bed alone, sat in silence that felt suffocating. Her therapist said this was necessary, that she'd been moving from one relationship directly into emotional dependence on Steve without processing what happened in between. Said she needed time to discover who she was outside of being someone's wife or someone's charity case. Alicia threw herself into the foundation's work, helped women escape situations like hers, provided resources and legal support, and proof that survival was possible. Each woman she helped felt like reclaiming a piece of what Josh had tried to take from her. But at night, alone with just Haven and her thoughts, Alicia felt the loneliness like a physical weight. She missed Steve, missed his presence, his steady calm, the way he looked at her like she was strong instead of broken. She wondered if he missed her too, or if distance made it easier to let go. 2 months passed. Haven learned to walk, stumbling through the townhouse with determined joy. Alicia rebuilt her credit, reclaimed her identity, became someone independent and whole. The foundation flourished. Josh's trial date was set. Life moved forward whether she was ready or not. Then one night, her doorbell rang at 11. Alicia checked the security camera Steve had insisted she install and saw him standing there, soaking wet from rain she hadn't noticed starting. She opened the door. "Steve? It's the anniversary." His voice was hollow. "Rebecca died 5 years ago today. I always spend it alone, drinking in my study, but tonight I couldn't. He broke off, and Alicia saw devastation in his face. This strong, controlled man completely shattered by grief he'd been carrying alone for too long. "Come inside." She pulled him into her home, closing the door against the storm. "You're soaking wet. I shouldn't be here. I know we said distance, but I didn't know where else to go." Steve looked lost, younger than his years. "Every year I think it'll hurt less. Every year I'm wrong." Alicia got towels, made him sit on her couch while she dried his hair like he was a child. He let her, not speaking, just shaking with suppressed emotion. "Tell me about her," Alicia said quietly. "Really tell me. Not the guilt version, the real version." So Steve talked. About Rebecca's laugh, how she snorted when something was really funny, about her terrible cooking that she insisted on making anyway, about how she'd wanted to name their son Daniel after her father, how she'd already painted the nursery blue, how she'd been so excited and terrified and perfect. He talked about the night she died, the call he'd ignored because the meeting was running long, how he'd found her car crumpled against a tree, how the paramedics said she'd called for him before she passed, how he'd held her body in the rain and begged her to come back. "I loved her," Steve whispered, "but I wasn't there when she needed me most. And now I'm terrified to love anyone again, because what if I fail them too?" Alicia held him while he cried. This powerful man who'd saved her breaking apart in her living room. When he finally quieted, she spoke. "You didn't fail, Rebecca. You made a mistake. A terrible, costly mistake, but not a betrayal. Not like Josh." She pulled back to meet his eyes. "You were trying to build a future for your family. Josh was trying to destroy me for profit. Those aren't the same thing. But the outcome was tragic. But intent matters. You loved Rebecca. You were working to support her and your baby. When she called, you didn't ignore her on purpose or choose someone else over her. You just made a wrong choice about timing." Alicia's voice was firm. "You've punished yourself enough. Rebecca wouldn't want you to stop living because she died." Steve looked at her like she'd spoken a revelation instead of obvious truth. "Maybe for him it was. I've been so afraid of failing you," he admitted, "of letting you depend on me and then not being there when you need me. That's why I suggested distance. Not because I don't want you, but because I'm terrified of wanting you." "I'm terrified too," Alicia confessed. "Terrified of trusting wrong again. Of missing red flags because I want to believe someone is good. But Steve, you're not Josh. You've never lied to me, never manipulated me, never tried to make yourself look better by making me feel smaller." They sat in silence, processing. Outside, the storm intensified. Inside, something shifted between them, walls coming down brick by careful brick. "I don't want distance anymore," Steve said. "These 2 months without you have been torture. I wake up thinking about you, go to sleep thinking about you, spend every day wanting to call but forcing myself not to. I don't want distance either. Alicia's heart hammered. But I need to know this is real, not trauma bonding or rescue fantasies or trying to fix broken pieces. I need to know you want me, not the idea of redemption I represent. I want you. Steve's voice was sure, steady. I want your strength and your fire, and the way you refuse to stay broken. I want to watch Haven grow up and be part of that growth. I want to come home to you both instead of an empty house full of ghosts. I want to stop surviving and start living, and I want to do it with you. The declaration hung between them, honest and vulnerable and real. Alicia felt tears on her cheeks but didn't wipe them away. I want that too. But slowly, carefully. We both have so much healing left to do. Slowly, Steve agreed. Carefully, but together. He stayed that night, sleeping on her couch because neither of them was ready for more, but both needed not to be alone. In the morning, Alicia found him making breakfast while Haven babbled happily in her high chair. It felt like possibility, like maybe they could build something real from the ruins they'd both been living in. But that afternoon, everything exploded. Josh's family held a press conference. They stood on courthouse steps, his mother and father and two brothers, all dressed in expensive clothes and righteous fury. They called Alicia a liar, claimed Josh was innocent, said he was being framed by a vindictive wife and her wealthy lover. Our son is a good man who made mistakes in his marriage, Josh's mother said, voice quivering with manufactured emotion. But he never stole anything, never tried to hurt anyone. This woman has destroyed him out of spite, and we won't stand for it. They announced they were launching a public campaign to clear Josh's name. They'd hired investigators, were appealing the custody ruling, who would expose Alicia's real nature to the world. Alicia watched the press conference on her phone, Steve beside her, both understanding what this meant. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. Chapter 8. The Phoenix Builds. Her Empire. The media attention hit like wildfire. Josh's family had money and connections, and they used both ruthlessly. Within days, Alicia's face was everywhere, not as survivor but villain. Headlines screamed about gold diggers and false accusations. Social media erupted with strangers declaring Josh innocent. Someone leaked Alicia's therapy records. Vulnerable moments turned into entertainment. Posts about depression after her grandmother's death, about feeling overwhelmed during pregnancy, about not being sure she was ready for motherhood, all twisted to support Josh's claim that she was mentally unstable. The foundation's donors started calling. Some offered support, but others withdrew funding quietly, not wanting controversy. Board members resigned. Partners distanced themselves. Alicia sat in her office, surrounded by hate mail and cancellation notices, watching everything she'd built crumble. They're trying to destroy you. Diane's voice was tight with fury. Josh's family has hired a publicity firm. They're running a coordinated campaign to rehabilitate his image by destroying yours. Can we fight it? In court, yes. But public opinion? Diane shook her head. Rich white man falsely accused by bitter wife is a story people want to believe. Your evidence doesn't matter when they've decided on the narrative. Steve arrived at her office that evening, finding her staring at her computer. Someone had created a website dedicated to exposing her lies, complete with doctored photos and fabricated testimony. This is my fault. His voice was ragged. If I hadn't been at that gala with you, if we hadn't been photographed together, they would have found something else. Alicia closed her laptop. Josh's family has decided I'm the enemy. Nothing I do or don't do will change that. Then we fight back harder. Steve pulled up a chair. I have resources. Investigators, lawyers, publicists. Let me use them. No, the word came out sharper than intended. I won't let you fight my battles. That's exactly what they want. Proof that I'm a kept woman, that everything I've accomplished is really yours. So what do? Just let them destroy you? Alicia thought about her grandmother, about building something beautiful from rubble. Thought about the women the foundation had helped, the lives changed, the cycles broken. I tell my story. All of it. No lawyers filtering it, no publicists spinning it. Just me telling the truth and trusting that the truth is powerful enough. Steve looked skeptical. The truth doesn't always win, Alicia. Maybe not. But silence definitely loses. She stood, decision made. I'm calling a press conference. I'm going to present every piece of evidence, play every recording, show exactly who Josh is. And then I'm going to dare his family to keep defending him. They'll come after you harder. Let them. Alicia felt the familiar fire igniting. I'm done being afraid of powerful people who think they can rewrite reality through money and connections. The press conference happened 3 days later. Alicia stood in the foundation's conference room, cameras pointed at her, reporters hungry for blood. She wore a simple dress, no expensive designer clothes to feed the gold digger narrative. Just her evidence, and her voice. She told everything. The night on Bennett Road, the sounds through the phone, the systematic theft, the forged documents. She played recordings of Josh planning her death, of him and Tessa laughing about how naive she was. She presented forensic evidence of the car sabotage, expert testimony about the signatures, financial records showing exactly where her money went. Then she talked about survival, about rebuilding from nothing, about learning to trust herself again, about refusing to let someone else's cruelty define her future. Josh's family says I'm lying. Her voice was steady, clear. They say I'm vengeful, unstable, vindictive. Maybe I am. Maybe surviving attempted murder makes you vindictive. Maybe discovering your husband planned to kill you and steal your inheritance makes you unstable. But I'm not lying. Every word I've said is documented, verified, proven. And if his family wants to keep defending him, they're going to have to explain why. The media firestorm that followed was unlike anything she'd expected. Half the internet called her brave. The other half called her a liar. Death threats flooded her inbox. Strangers showed up at the foundation. Someone spray-painted accusations across her townhouse door. But survivors started coming forward. Women Josh had dated before Alicia. Women he'd scammed or manipulated or hurt. Each one had a story eerily similar to hers. Each one provided evidence that this wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern. Josh's trial date arrived. The courtroom packed with media, with Josh's family in the front row, wearing expressions of martyred suffering. Tessa sat separately, having taken a plea deal in exchange for testimony. Her baby had been born, a boy she'd named something neutral that wouldn't remind her of his father. The prosecution presented their case methodically. Financial crimes, fraud, conspiracy. The recordings played for the jury. Josh's voice discussing Alicia's death like a business transaction. Expert witnesses explained the car sabotage, the forged signatures, the systematic theft. Josh's defense was that Alicia was lying, that she'd forged everything to frame him, that her affair with Steve motivated the elaborate scheme. His lawyer painted her as a woman scorned, willing to destroy an innocent man rather than admit her own failures. But the jury had the evidence. The recordings that couldn't be faked, the forensics that proved the forgeries, the pattern of behavior with multiple women. After 3 hours of deliberation, they returned with a verdict. Guilty on all counts, Josh's mother screamed. His father demanded a mistrial. Josh himself sat frozen, face blank with shock. He genuinely believed his charm would carry him through, that his family's money and influence would protect him. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in prison. Not enough, Alicia thought. Not nearly enough for trying to murder your pregnant wife. But it was something. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Josh's family pushed past, refusing to speak. But Alicia stood at the microphone one more time. Justice isn't the same as healing, she said. Josh going to prison doesn't undo what he did or give me back the years he stole. But it does mean he can't hurt anyone else. And sometimes that's all you get, the knowledge that you stopped a predator from finding another victim. She went home to her townhouse, to Haven babbling in her playpen, to the life she'd rebuilt from nothing. Steve called, but she didn't answer. She needed this moment alone, needed to sit with the hollowness of victory, because she'd won. Josh was in prison. Haven was safe. The foundation was recovering. She should feel triumphant. Instead, she just felt tired. Tired of fighting, tired of being strong, tired of carrying the weight of survival like armor that never came off. The doorbell rang. Alicia checked the camera, saw Steve standing there with takeout bags and a careful expression. She let him in. "You don't have to be alone tonight," he said quietly. "I know you can be. You've proven you can survive anything, but you don't have to." Alicia looked at him, at this man who'd appeared when she needed saving and stayed when she needed space, who'd given her room to be strong without making her prove it constantly. "Stay," she said. "Please stay." They ate dinner in silence, Haven between them, the closest thing to family any of them had. And for the first time since that night on Bennett Road, Alicia felt something like peace settling into her bones. The war was over. Now came the harder part, learning to live in the aftermath. Chapter 9. The Final Assault. 2 weeks after Josh's sentencing, someone leaked the full trial transcripts online. Every horrible detail, every recording, every piece of evidence, all became public entertainment. The internet devoured Alicia's trauma, turned her worst moments into memes and content. Conservative podcasters picked up the story, twisting it into a cautionary tale about vindictive women destroying innocent men. Men's rights activists made Josh a martyr, claiming he was the real victim. His mother gave tearful interviews about her son being railroaded by a corrupt system. The harassment intensified beyond anything Alicia had experienced. Someone posted her home address online. Protesters showed up outside her townhouse, shouting accusations. Her phone number was leaked, resulting in hundreds of threatening calls. Someone tried to break into the foundation's offices. Then Child Protective Services showed up at her door. The woman was professional but cold, explaining that multiple complaints had been filed, claiming Haven was being neglected, that Alicia's obsession with revenge was harming her daughter, that the home environment was unstable and potentially dangerous. Alicia let her in, showed her the immaculate townhouse, Haven's well-stocked nursery, the schedule of doctor appointments and developmental milestones. The investigator poked through everything, asked intrusive questions, made notes with an unreadable expression. "Everything appears in order," she finally said, "but we'll need to do follow-up visits. Make sure the situation remains stable." After she left, Alicia sat on her floor and shook. They were using Haven as a weapon. Josh's family was trying to take her daughter away, not because Haven was in danger, but because it was the only way left to hurt her. Steve found her like that an hour later, still sitting on the floor, staring at nothing. "They called CPS," she said dully. "Filed false reports claiming I'm neglecting Haven." Steve's face went hard. "His family? Who else? They can't win in court, so they're trying to destroy me through public opinion and intimidation." Alicia felt something crack inside her. "I don't know how to fight this. Every time I answer one attack, 3 more appear. They have unlimited resources and nothing to lose. I can't win." "Yes, you can." Steve crouched beside her. "You just can't win by playing their game. So we changed the game." "How?" "By going after them the way they're going after you." His voice was cold, calculating. "I've been holding back, trying to let you fight your own battles. But they've made this personal. They threatened your daughter. So now we use every resource I have to destroy them." "Steve." "Josh's father owns commercial real estate. I'm buying out his investors and calling in loans. His mother sits on charitable boards. I'm having my people contact those organizations with evidence of where their donations really go. His brothers work in finance. I'm ensuring their firms know exactly what kind of family they employ." Steve's expression was merciless. "They wanted a war. I'm going to give them one." Alicia should object, should insist on fighting her own battles, but she was exhausted, and they'd threatened Haven, her daughter, her innocent baby who'd done nothing wrong. "Do it," she said. Destroy them. Steve made calls throughout the night, mobilizing resources Alicia hadn't realized existed. By morning, Josh's father's primary investors had withdrawn backing. Two of his mother's boards had requested her resignation. News articles appeared questioning the family's business practices and charitable giving. But Josh's family had resources too. They escalated, hiring private investigators to dig into Alicia's past, looking for anything: childhood trauma, college indiscretions, failed relationships that could be weaponized. They found her father. Alicia hadn't spoken to him in 10 years, not since he'd walked out on her and her dying mother for another woman. But suddenly he was giving interviews, claiming Alicia had always been troubled, difficult, vindictive, that she'd driven him away with her demands and emotional manipulation. The man who'd abandoned his teenage daughter during the worst time of her life was now painting himself as a victim of her cruelty, and people believed him. Alicia's therapy records were leaked again, this time including sessions about her father's abandonment. Private journals she'd written as a grieving teenager appeared online. Intimate thoughts about not being good enough to make her father stay. Everything painful and vulnerable turned into ammunition. The foundation lost more donors. Staff members quit under pressure. The board called an emergency meeting to discuss whether Alicia should step down as director. She sat through the meeting in numb silence while board members, people she'd trusted, debated whether her presence was damaging the organization. They talked about her like she wasn't there, discussing her baggage and controversial nature, and whether survivors of abuse made good leaders or just brought drama. In the end, they voted to keep her, but strongly suggested she take a leave of absence. Let things cool down. Come back when she wasn't such a lightning rod for controversy. Alicia walked out of that meeting and straight to her car. She sat in the parking lot and finally let herself feel the full weight of what Josh's family had done. They hadn't just attacked her reputation, they'd made her toxic. Made it so everywhere she went, conflict followed. Made her into someone even her allies wanted distance from. Her phone rang. Steve, checking in like he'd been doing hourly since the CPS visit. They won, she said when she answered. Josh's family won. I've lost the foundation, my credibility, everything I built. They made me poison, and I don't know how to come back from that. Come home, Steve said. Come to the estate, you and Haven, just for tonight. Let me help. I can't keep running to you every time things get hard. You're not running, you're regrouping. There's a difference. His voice was firm. Come home, Alicia, please. She drove to his estate because she had nowhere else to go. Steve met her at the door, took Haven from her arms, and guided her inside. The place felt like sanctuary, like safety she hadn't experienced in weeks. I'm going to fix this, Steve said. Josh's family has overplayed their hand. They've gone from defending Josh to actively harassing you. That crosses legal lines. What are you going to do? File for restraining orders, civil harassment suits, and I'm going to use every connection I have to make sure their campaign of terror becomes public knowledge. He settled Haven in the portable crib he'd somehow acquired. But more importantly, I'm going to show you that their attacks only work if you let them define you. You're not what they say. You're a survivor who fought back. That story is stronger than their lies. Alicia wanted to believe him, but she was so tired of fighting, so exhausted from constantly defending herself against people determined to destroy her. What if I can't do this anymore? What if I just want to disappear, change my name, move somewhere nobody knows my story? Then I'll help you do that too. Steve's voice was gentle. Whatever you need, whatever you choose, I'm with you. But I think you're stronger than you know, and I think giving up now would break something in you that Josh's family doesn't deserve to break. They sat together in silence, Haven sleeping peacefully nearby. Outside, the harassment campaign continued. Inside, Alicia tried to find the strength to keep fighting. Her phone buzzed. Another threatening message, another stranger telling her to kill herself, another person convinced she was evil. She almost deleted it, but something made her read to the end. The message was different. A woman thanking her for speaking out, saying Alicia's story had given her courage to leave her own abusive husband, saying the foundation had saved her life, saying she knew Alicia was under attack and wanted her to know she wasn't alone. More messages followed, buried among the hate. Survivors sharing their gratitude, women offering support. People who understood that Josh's family's desperate defense of him only proved how dangerous he really was. Alicia read through them all, feeling something shift inside her. Josh's family could control the narrative, could weaponize media and money and influence. But they couldn't erase the women she'd helped. They couldn't undo the foundation's work. They couldn't make her truth disappear, no matter how hard they tried. "I'm going to fight back," she said. "Not by playing their game, but by doing what I do best, helping survivors. Let them attack me. I'll just keep working, keep speaking, keep existing as proof that their son didn't destroy me." Steve smiled, fierce and proud. "That's my girl." But even as she made the declaration, Alicia knew the worst was still coming. Josh's family wouldn't stop. The harassment would continue, and eventually something would break: her spirit, her reputation, or her ability to keep fighting. She just had to decide which one she was willing to sacrifice. Chapter 10. The Woman Who Rose. 3 months later, Alicia stood at a podium giving the keynote speech at the National Conference on Financial Abuse. Haven sat in the front row with Steve, 15 months old, and waving enthusiastically whenever she caught her mother's eye. The harassment campaign had continued for weeks after that night at Steve's estate. Josh's family threw everything they had: more leaked records, more fabricated stories, more pressure. But something unexpected happened. The harder they attacked, the more visible they became. Their obsessive pursuit transformed from defending their son into something clearly vindictive and cruel. A reporter investigated Josh's family's tactics. The resulting article exposed the coordinated harassment campaign, the private investigators following Alicia, the threats made through intermediaries. Public opinion began to shift. Josh's mother's remaining board positions evaporated. His father's business partners distanced themselves. The foundation not only survived, but flourished. Women who'd been afraid found courage in Alicia's refusal to be silenced. Other women came forward with stories of abuse by wealthy men whose families protected them. Donations poured in. The board members who'd suggested she step down resigned instead, replaced by survivors who understood the mission wasn't about being palatable, it was about being powerful. "We're taught to be quiet about our abuse," Alicia said into the microphone, "to protect our abusers' reputations, to avoid making people uncomfortable, to move on and heal in silence. But silence protects perpetrators. It allows them to find new victims. It lets their families rewrite history and paint them as misunderstood instead of dangerous." The audience hung on every word. These were women who'd survived what she'd survived, who understood the specific hell of having someone you love systematically destroy you. Josh is in prison. His family is disgraced. The foundation is helping hundreds of women. By every measure, I won. She paused. But winning doesn't mean healing, doesn't erase the years he stole or the trust he destroyed. Victory and peace aren't the same thing. After the speech, women approached with stories and gratitude and questions. Alicia wanted to tell them she wasn't that strong, that she still had nightmares, that some days she barely held it together. But they needed to believe survival was possible. Steve met her when the crowd thinned. Haven reached for her mother, and Alicia pulled her daughter close. "You were incredible," Steve said quietly. "I meant every word." Alicia looked at Haven, at this perfect human who'd been born into chaos and survived it. "She's why I keep fighting, so she grows up knowing her mother didn't surrender." They left the conference together, driving back to Alicia's townhouse. She'd kept it despite Steve's offers to move into the estate. She needed her own space, her own home, proof she could stand alone. But Steve was there most nights. They'd been dating properly for 3 months, taking it slow, building something real on a foundation that wasn't trauma or rescue, learning each other outside of crisis. That evening, after putting Haven to bed, they sat in Alicia's small garden. Spring was coming, bringing new growth after a brutal winter. "I've been thinking," Steve said carefully, "about the future, about what I want." Alicia's heart sped up. "What do you want?" "I want this. You and me in Haven. Not because I'm trying to replace what I lost with Rebecca, but because I choose it. Because you make me want to live instead of just survive." He took her hand. "I want to build a life with you, as equals, as partners. Two people who found each other in the darkness and chose to walk toward the light together." It wasn't a proposal, exactly. It was something deeper, a commitment to keep choosing each other, keep building together, keep fighting for the life they wanted, instead of accepting what trauma tried to give them. "I want that too," Alicia said. "I choose you, not because you saved me, but because of who you are now, who we are together." Steve pulled her close, and for the first time since that night on Bennett Road, Alicia felt completely at peace. Not because everything was perfect. Josh's family still sent occasional threats, the foundation still faced challenges, healing was still ongoing work. But because she'd survived the worst and come out the other side powerful enough to choose her own happiness. Haven's cry came through the baby monitor. Alicia stood to check on her, but Steve was already moving. "I'll go," he said. "You rest." She watched him disappear inside, this man who'd appeared when she was dying on a dark road and stayed through everything after, who'd given her space to be strong and room to be vulnerable, who'd helped her remember that love could be safe instead of a weapon. Alicia looked at the garden, at the roses she'd planted last month. They were starting to bloom, pushing through soil and reaching towards sunlight, like her. Like everything she'd rebuilt from the wreckage Josh tried to leave in her life. She heard Steve's voice through the monitor, gentle as he settled Haven back to sleep. Heard her daughter's contented sigh. Heard the sounds of a family that was imperfect and complicated and real. This was her life now. Not the fairy tale she'd believed in when she married Josh. Something better, something she'd fought for, bled for, refused to surrender even when surrender seemed easier. The woman who died on Bennett Road, betrayed and alone, was gone. In her place was someone forged in fire, tempered by betrayal, strong enough to choose love without fear. And that was worth everything.